Death Knights aren't just any old class, so this isn't any old video. DKs are World of Warcraft's original hero class. That already makes them stand out, but these guys are not born in the usual sense. They are forged through betrayal, torment, and some of the darkest magic Azeroth has ever seen. But here's the question that we always ask. Where does all this power actually come from? Is it their cursed blades, the Lich King's control, or maybe the tormented souls that are bound inside them? Today we're diving into the grim truth behind Death Knights, what fuels them, and why their existence is both powerful and tragic. So to understand a Death Knight, you have to understand that their strength isn't truly their own, it's forced. Stolen, in fact. And it all comes down to three sources: necromantic rune forging, the Lich King's will, and the souls that they consume. The very first Death Knights, created by Gul'dan in the First War, were basically experiments in dark magic. He ripped the corpses of slain warlocks and shoved them into the corpses of Stormwind Knights. The result? Warriors with the body of knights, but the sorcery burning inside them. Of course, the first and most well known is Terron Gorefiend. But now the modern Death Knights, the ones that we play, are even more terrifying. They're a fallen hero's body infused with scourge magic. They aren't simply soldiers of death, they're layered monstrosities. And at the core of it all is the Rune Blade. These aren't just weapons, they are living conduits. The runes etched into them channel the three schools of DK magic: Blood, Frost, and Unholy. Blood thrives on stealing vitality, while Frost wields raw icy force, and Unholy spreads plague and necromancy. To carry one is to hold a constant connection to the screaming souls trapped inside. How does that translate in game? Well, you have rune forging. Death Knights create runed weapons out of the weapons we find in game. But of course there is a tragedy, because the power demands a cost. Death Knights survive by feeding suffering back into their blades. It's a parasitic cycle. Inflict pain, grow stronger. Resist it, and the weapon starts to eat you. That is the cruel loop they live in. So originally, every Death Knight was just an extension of the Lich King's will. Their powers were his to give, and his to take away. Raise Dead? Not their magic. It was a direct loan from the Frozen Throne. Army of the Dead? The Lich King tearing open a crack between life and death, forcing souls into service. But at the Light's Hope Chapel, something incredible happened. The Lich King's control shattered when faced with the Light's pure, uncorrupted power. And that moment of defiance gave the Knights of the Ebon Blade their free will. And yet, they didn't lose their strength. Why? Because their blades and runes were still bound with necromantic energy. That power was now fused into them permanently. Fast forward to Legion, and we see them working with Bolvar Fordragon, of course the new Lich King after Wrath. It's not the same control Arthas had. Now it's more of a tense alliance. Bolvar gives them access to Scourge armies and the forces of Icecrown, but their abilities are their own. They're no longer puppets, they are masters of their own damnation. Alright, of course, so now on to arguably my favourite part, but it's the Death Knight abilities and the lore behind them. So first we have Death Grip, not just a taunt, but it's actually warlock magic twisted into something worse. A Death Knight rips open reality and drags a victim through the Shadowlands, slamming them to their feet. Terrifying, both physically and psychologically. Anti-magic shell. Not a shield in the traditional sense, you surround yourself with void energy, annihilating any incoming magic. Why is it green? I have no idea. Of course, as I mentioned before, we have Raised Dead. When a Death Knight summons a ghoul, they're not just animating a body, they are enslaving a soul. The stronger the knight, the stronger the servant, ranging from geists to massive abominations. And finally, Apocalypse. This is peak unholy power. A blast of decay that not only devastates the living, but also forces nearby corpses to claw back into life as ghouls. It's a small-scale apocalypse every time. Of course, not all Death Knight's power ever made it into the final game. A few pieces of lost content show just how wild Blizzard's early game designs were. So first off, one early Death Knight spec was a ghostly parry tank. Another leaned hard into being a Necromancer style caster, but they eventually merged into the 3 specs that we now know. And that's kind of the biggest thing as well, because back in the day, players wanted Necromancers. As well as Blizzard to bring back Rune Masters, an original class design that was scrapped in early beta WoW. And I guess under everyone's noses, they basically just combined them beautifully into a necromantic rune weaver. But finally, there was an original concept in early Wrath beta that you would sacrifice a level 60 character on your account in order to reanimate them as a Death Knight. And as a bit of a character lore fanatic, I did this manually back in the day when I created mine. I really loved that kind of concept that you had a story before you became a Death Knight. But in the end, Death Knights are powered by Torment, Necromancy, and Stolen Souls. That doesn't make them mindless slaves though. Their power is theirs to command. Even if it comes at a cost, they can never escape. But what about the class that willingly burns away their soul for strength? Next time, in Season 2, we will talk about Demon Hunters. Keep an eye out for that, but I will be working on a few other things in the meantime. If you liked this one, please do like and subscribe. I will probably make a top 10 of the ones I've done so far, especially for which ones are most powerful. But thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day.